So if you're running a Drupal site backed by a PostgreSQL database, yeah, go ahead and cancel your long weekend plans. Welcome to a Code Ninja Security Advisory. I'm issuing a high alert briefing right now on CVE 2026-9082. This is a highly critical SQL injection vulnerability in Drupal Core, and guys, it is actively being exploited in the wild as we speak. We're tracking mass exploitation campaigns, and as part of our commitment to coordinated vulnerability disclosure, we're getting this raw intelligence out to you immediately. Let's dive right into the hard data so you can lock down your perimeter.
Look, this isn't your average bug. We are looking at a brutal 9.8 out of 10 CVSS score. Internally, the Drupal security team rated this a 23 out of 25 on their own risk scale. They classified it as highly critical, and let me tell you, they do absolutely not hand that tier out lightly. The crucial takeaway for you here is that this explainer is meant to force immediate vendor patching across your infrastructure. Seriously, if you're exposed, you do not have time to wait for the next scheduled maintenance window. You need to act today. If you want proof of just how fast this situation is moving, well, the incredibly compressed 72-hour timeline really tells the whole story. The vulnerability, tracked as SA Typecore 2026-004, was initially disclosed on May 20th. By May 22nd, defenders were already seeing active mass exploitation. CISA immediately slapped this onto their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog and issued a federal patch deadline of May 27th for civilian executive branch agencies. Think about that. A 5-day window from disclosure to mandated remediation? That is about as urgent as CISA gets without issuing a full-blown emergency directive.
Okay, before we get into the exact mechanics of the exploit, and more importantly, your mitigation protocol, we're going to pause for a quick comms check. I need you to subscribe to @cybertech79 and enable those notifications. Treat this as a strict security necessity. This is exactly how you get real-time intelligence drops the very second they hit the wire. Also, go ahead and drop a like on this explainer right now as a formal acknowledgement of receipt for this intel. It confirms you're plugged into the grid and ready to defend your network. All right, comms check complete. Moving on.
So let's look at the actual blast radius here. Security researchers at Imperva have already observed over 15,000 attack attempts targeting nearly 6,000 distinct sites across 65 different countries. What's really fascinating and frankly scary is the targeting data. Attackers are heavily focusing on the gaming and financial services sectors. Right now, what we're mostly seeing is aggressive fingerprinting. Essentially, attackers are knocking on the door to see if you're running that vulnerable Postgres backend before they drop the full payload. They're mapping the attack surface for a follow-up wave that is going to be much quieter and, honestly, much more destructive.
So what actually happens if that payload lands?
Well, the impact is catastrophic. Successful exploitation gives an unauthenticated attacker deep database access. We are talking about the exfiltration of highly sensitive data, like session tokens and user password hashes. From there, it is just a trivial pivot to escalate their privileges straight to administrator. And it gets worse. Depending on your PostgreSQL configuration, they can leverage commands like copy from program to achieve full remote code execution. Basically, your web server effectively becomes an attacker's playground right inside your network.
Let's break down exactly who is in the crosshairs here. You are at risk if you're running Drupal Core versions 8.0 all the way through 11.3.9. But, and this is a big but, specifically and only if you are using a PostgreSQL database backend. Sites running MySQL, MariaDB, or SQLite, you can breathe a massive sigh of relief. You are completely safe from this specific flaw. For the rest of you, the vulnerability is exposed via the JSON API module, which, by the way, has been enabled by default since Drupal 9. It's also exposed through views exposed filters, or even standard routing endpoints like the publicly exposed /user/login page. If you have that stack, make no mistake, you are vulnerable.
Okay, let's move to the technical deep dive and see how this exploit actually works under the hood. This is what we call a PDO, or PHP Data Object, placeholder subversion. The root cause is a complete breakdown in Drupal's database abstraction layer. Typically, SQL injection targets parameter values. But here, the attackers are manipulating PHP associative array keys. When the PostgreSQL entity query condition handler processes an HTTP request, it takes user-controlled array keys from the JSON API filter parameters and literally concatenates them directly into SQL identifiers to create those placeholders. Because these keys aren't sanitized, an attacker can just pass a key with a closing parenthesis to completely break the placeholder parsing, and then they just append literal malicious SQL directly into the query. It's wild.
But the fix for this is surprisingly elegant. It's a tiny patch with a massive impact. Instead of processing the raw associative array with all those malicious keys, the developers simply wrap the incoming payload in the built-in PHP function array_values. That's it. This function canonicalizes the array, completely stripping out the attacker's malicious string keys and replacing them with standard harmless integer indices before the SQL placeholders ever even generated. It elegantly neutralizes the entire threat without breaking the database abstraction layer's functionality.
Right, now for the absolutely critical mitigation protocol. Grab a pen because here is your battle plan. Step 1. Verify your database backend immediately by checking your settings.php file. If you are running Postgres, proceed directly to Step 2. Update your Drupal core to the patched breaches right now. That means moving to 11.3.10, 11.2.12, 10.6.9, or whatever patch version aligns with your current release train. Step 3. Deploy those web application firewall rules. Solutions like Akamai App and API Protector and Imperva already have SQL injection risk groups that successfully filter these exact nested array payload signatures. Get them enabled in blocking mode. And finally, Step 4. Hunt for compromise. Scour your access logs for anomalous post and GET requests hitting your database abstraction APIs, paying special attention to anything coming from anonymous sessions.
I want to take a quick moment to address the reality of this rapid intelligence drop. We practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure because in today's threat landscape, the attackers already have this exploit. They are already scanning for it. Users need to know exactly how this works to protect their perimeter. By understanding that the attack vector targets array keys and leverages the JSON API, defenders can actually properly tune their WAFs and actively hunt for indicators of compromise on their own networks. Keeping technical details a secret, that only protects the attackers.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. We put so much trust in modern developer conveniences, things like object relational mappers and database abstraction layers. We just assume they inherently protect us from classic flaws like SQL injection, right? But as CVE 2026-9082 completely proves, when a security boundary doubles as a developer convenience, a single flaw at that structural level can instantly expose millions of systems. So, is your database abstraction layer actually secure? You have your briefing and you have your protocol. Now go lock down your environments. Stay secure.